This weekend, AC Milan will potentially play the biggest game of the entire season. An away fixture against Inter. The Derby della Madonnina. There can be a lot said about this weekend's clash, and most of it is a mix of anticipation, nerves, optimism and pessimism. Games like this are rare in football generally. Few games in world football match the importance of the Milanese derby. Even when you look at the recent history of this game, it has never really meant as much. Of course, that may be said with an underlying knowledge of the previous results. However, the two have never been so close in the table. Last season, the Rossoneri were already doomed before the derby. It did not really matter. At least not in the same context. The same can really be said for the derbies until the Champions League season, and perhaps before that, the Scudetto year. Neither team wants to lose the game, of course not. When context adds to it, though, both teams can only win, and that is the case here. Inter have a 2-point lead in the table, and with the Diavolo's record, they can really establish themselves as Scudetto candidates. Of course, they are already well in the conversation. However, winning every game against the current top four would do wonders for the H2H at the end of the season. A chance for an advantage that points, ultimately, cannot buy. When you look at the past few seasons, then, given the context, one would find it difficult to suggest that this is not the biggest derby for both clubs in years. Yes, you can put forward ideas, but we've not even considered the aspect of things off the pitch. This will also offer both teams the chance to be the first victors over their rivals in their own stadium. Money buys the stadium, but the first win in a co-owned San Siro, money cannot buy that. Both sets of colors will have different approaches to this game, of course, but maybe Milan can come into it with some swagger and confidence. Highlights in a dark season. Erasing last season from memory is difficult. After all, it is the first where the Rossoneri have not achieved European football in several years. An 8th-place finish could not be made better by that night in Saudi Arabia, nor those nights at San Siro. However, it was a bit of a coping mechanism. The season was bad, but at least there was this. Of course, this is the derby record. The Rossoneri played 55 games last season, yet faced their biggest rivals 5 times. Not once did they add to the loss tally for the year. Win, win, draw, draw, win. Matteo Gabbia, Tammy Abraham, Luka Jovic. Each key to 3 big wins. The Italian defender bagged a late header to give a first derby win in 6 games, of which each were defeats. A big moment for a man who was given a chance to crown a year of redemption, cementing himself further into Rossoneri hearts. Abraham, then, wrote himself into the books with a similar story. Another late goal, another comeback in the Supercoppa Italiana, another win. 2 games, 2 wins. Both filled with drama. Then, Jovic. An outcast for most of the season, the Serbian took a rare opportunity with both hands and grabbed a brace in 49 minutes. A fantastic way to prove that he still had the ability which the Diavolo once gambled upon. At one point, there were suggestions that the Nerazzurri could do the quadruple. Had they gotten results against their biggest rivals, they almost definitely would have secured a domestic treble. Instead, they ended up with nothing. In a season of desperation, there was that light. Something to poke fun at, something which, ultimately, the Rossoneri must defend now. Inter once held the bragging rights, and now, Milan can create a streak of their own. Of course, there have been some changes since the final game of the 2024-25 season, there have been for both teams. Nevertheless, the fact that 2 managers who will not be remembered at the level that Allegri has managed to topple an Inter team which has remained largely the same, also adds more to the results from last year. Allegri's reason to hope. Last season's record offers a reason to be confident in itself. However, then you also look at the coach perspective, and there is more to look towards. Massimiliano Allegri, unlike Christian Chivu in this regard, is not a stranger to facing Inter on the touchline.